The Leading with Audacious Confidence podcast is brought to you by the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Are you ready to have your mind blown? I mean, really ready to have your mind blown? Because let me tell you, my mind was blown multiple times during this interview. Yes, I know it was long. We spent a good while with Brian, but it is so worth it. We dive into the mind, body, spirit connection and how important it is to really understand it and how to regulate your emotions, your reactions, what it does to your nervous system. I mean, it was so rich. I don't want you to miss a single moment of this. Don't have any distractions. Dive in. If you need to pause and come back to it, pause and come back to it. But let me tell you, get ready for your mind to be blown.
Welcome to the Leading with Audacious Confidence podcast. Our mission for the show is to support leaders who are climbing that ladder of success with warnings, practical tips, and techniques from leadership experts to highlight not just what it takes to be a leader in this age, but in the process, build your confidence to show up more powerfully in your role. I'm your host, Alicia Khoury, founder and CEO of Audacious Concepts, Inc., a boutique consulting firm providing audacious solutions to nagging and persistent people issues clogging the revenue pipeline of your organization. From optimizing talent to reducing conflict and improving communication, our brain science, people data tools, and expert coaching help you find the elegant solution to get the job done with more ease and less stress. Now, let's join in on the conversation. So welcome to this conversation I'm about to have with this amazing man, Brian Trzaskos. And listen, he has so many certifications. I'm about to read you the alphabet soup of his bio, so listen carefully. PT, LMT, CSCS, CMP, MIC is a co-creator and sensation-based motivation coaching, a somatic trauma-sensitive methodology, and has extensive experience in diverse clinical settings, ranging from cutting his teeth at the world-renowned Craig Hospital for TBI and SCI rehabilitation, to operating his own integrative wellness center in upstate New York. As a practicing physical therapist and student of Eastern movement and meditation practices for over 30 years, Brian is a nationally recognized expert for his work in training health and wellness leaders how to successfully address mental wellness, burnout, and chronic pain challenges with trauma-sensitive somatic coaching practices. Brian is currently the president of New Health, Inc. and director of education at the Somatic Coaching Academy. He earned his degree in physical therapy and trauma-informed organization certificate from the State University of New York at Buffalo. So all of that alphabet that I just shared, Brian, tell us what all that means.
Oh yeah, Alicia, thank you so much. It's great being here. And as you're reading that, I'm like, who is this guy? Sort of thing. I got to meet him.
He sounds really awesome, right?
Right? Yeah. Well, it sounds like he's been on the earth for a while, kind of thing. So,
and you're only 25.
Feeling my legs a little bit. Yeah, exactly. So thanks so much for that intro. I really appreciate it. Love being here with you. Love the work that you're doing in the world. Really empowering people around this idea of confidence. It's so super important, especially with everything that's going on right now in the world, right? And like we're really coming at a reckoning, I think, in a lot of ways with how we have been raised as people, the culture that we're in, racial diversities, inequities, all that kind of stuff is really coming to a head. And so the work you're doing right now is so super important. I'm honored to be here with you.
Listen, I am honored to have you here. So we're going to start with your certifications. So just so people know that, you know what you're talking about when it comes to trauma, when it comes to the mind-body connection. So explain to people what somatic means.
So somatic means basically soma, S-O-M-A, is the Greek word for body. And so somatic is essentially body focus, if you will. So the idea when we talk about somatic coaching or somatic practices, we're really talking about body-centered practices. And in the way that the word somatic has been adopted into our culture is that there's also an element of holism there, like holistic nature.
Mm.
Way back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there was the body mind split, with Descartes. Descartes was the original doctor who made a deal with the church, and the church said, "Hey, we are in charge of people's spirit and their mind, and you get the body," sort of thing. And so there was a division around medicine, what happened in healing, what happened in, of course, I have a physical therapy background, massage therapy background, strength conditioning background. I'm a manual therapist, certified. I manipulate joints and that kind of stuff. I do work on soft tissue. So, I mean, I've been in that world for a really long time. And I found myself when I was in that world and working at Craig Hospital, I was so blessed to be one of my very first jobs out of college. I actually did an internship at Craig, and then was invited to go back and work there, which was like a miracle in and of itself, because people don't leave, like professionals don't leave that place. Like, the average length of stay for a physical therapist, occupational therapist, a rehab professional at Craig Hospital was like well over 20 years.
Wow.
And the national average for how long PTs stay at jobs is like 2 years.
Wow.
So it
So
tells
yeah.
you, like, this place was really, really hard nut to crack. And I did an internship there, which was just like, I won the lottery basically to get an internship there. And then I won the lottery to be invited back to practice there as a PT of having only 1 year of experience in the field. And so when I went back there to work, we were working with people with traumatic brain injuries, traumatic spinal cord injuries, so lots of trauma, obviously. And what I recognized was very quickly, it wasn't only physical trauma. So as a physical therapist, I'm working with people's physical bodies. And I
Yeah.
realized in working with them that I couldn't separate. I couldn't, like, hey, just send your body over here to work with
Let me
me,
work on
and
it
send your
and keep
send
your
your
mind
emotions.
somewhere
Yeah,
else.
send your emotions over to psychology and work with. Like, it doesn't work.
Oh.
And one of the cool things about working at Craig was it was a very, very integrated team. So we worked together as like a single mind. We worked with the PTOT, recreational therapy, speech therapy, neuropsychology, nursing, physiatry. We all worked together, and really to put our brain trust together to approach the patients and the patients' families in very holistic ways. And so I learned
Can I
just a
just
tremendous amount there.
butt in for a second?
Yeah.
Because what's so important, I was reading in this book, I don't know, you probably read it, Cybernetics.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Right, Maxwell Maltz, and he
Yep.
talked about how breakthroughs in certain disciplines usually come from someone outside the discipline.
Yeah.
So him as a plastic surgeon, he's not a psychologist, thought that these psychology things should come from psychologists, but it came from someone who was a plastic surgeon, working on people's, what they consider deformities, understanding there's something in the mind that needs to be addressed. It's not just the physical. And so, yeah, what you're talking about is so true. You can't separate it, and people have tried.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the general knowledge out there is that they are separated.
Exactly. That's the problem, Alicia, right? Because if you come from this idea that they're separated, it's very hard to bring them back together. So the idea of what we do at the Somatic Coaching Academy is that we make we put our flag in the ground that there was never a separation, right?
Right.
You are a body, mind, spirit. Yeah, you are a body, mind, spirit right now in the moment. And any provider, practitioner, anybody you go to that wants to split that apart is not, for me personally, is not going to be, effective for me. It's not going to be helpful for me.
Right.
Because I know I'm whole and you're whole. So it would have
Yeah.
to come from an approach that we were never split apart to begin with. That's a complete cultural
Ideation.
manufactured ideation that hasn't helped
Right.
us. It's actually really
And
problem
it
now.
created a whole paradigm shift in belief, which
Yeah,
is
totally.
dangerous now. Okay.
Yes.
And so this whole idea of trauma informed coaching, because I did a session with you guys, and it was, it's like, duh, of course, if we experience emotional trauma, it's in our bodies. I even though I've been in this world for at least 10 years,
Yeah.
It still took me hearing you say, the words that emotional trauma affects the body. Your
Yeah.
subconscious trauma, anything that's buried in the subconscious will affect the physical body. Because I
Yeah.
still have that paradigm, even though it's not something that was generally taught to me specifically. It's the idea that's been implanted in our subconscious through the medicine, through, like you said, the church and medicine, that they're completely separate things without having to tell us they're separate. The idea is there until someone told me it's not separate.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Right. So we're born thinking it's separate, and we have to be told it's actually not separate. Yeah. What a great
Not
point.
separate. So
Yeah. What a great point.
it's amazing that even though I know there's a mind body spirit connection, I talk about the mind body spirit connection, I didn't really integrate how connected your subconscious mind is to the physical things that happen in you, the stresses when you feel
Mhm.
stress. It's just not just emotional or mental stress, it is physically affecting your body as well. So
Yeah.
sickness comes from that.
Yeah, totally. And that can be measured, by the way, right? I mean, so when you're saying I'm experiencing emotional stress, if your body was being measured, the magnetic field and electromagnetic conductance in your body was being measured, it would be different than if you were not feeling stressed. Like it's actually measurable. It's
Because
actually
we are
measurable.
energy.
We are
It all
energy.
makes sense.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Right. It all makes sense.
Somebody knew
It's
what they
actually
were doing. They
totally,
put
yeah,
us
way
together.
back when. Yeah, way back when, a long time ago, in the early 1900s, where we actually had proof that that we are energy, that there's an electrical pulse that goes with the heart, right? We've known that since the early 1900s, and here we are over 100 years later, still like, well, what do you mean I'm
What do
energy?
you mean I'm energy?
I mean,
Everything in your body functions through energy. I mean, your brain waves, that's energy. Your
yep,
heartbeat, like you said, is energy. The way the blood pumps through your veins is all energy. We are
all
all
energy.
energetic beings. Like we
We
came
are.
from energy that created us. We're all just a vibration. And so anyway, I love all this stuff, and I want to go back into some of the things that you're doing. I just have to make the time in my schedule to do it.
Yeah.
But because it's all fascinating. So before we get further into this, tell people how they can, because I'm sure now people are like, well, how do tell people how they can get a hold of you, and then we'll continue talking.
Yeah, yeah. The best place to get hold of us is at the somaticoachingacademy.com. So
Okay.
everything you want to know about what we do at Somatic Coaching is right there at the somaticoachingacademy.com.
All
Come
right.
check us
So
out.
reach out to Brian Somatic. So that's Somatic.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Academy.
Somatic
Yeah.
Coaching Academy.com.
Academy.
So, so this is about leadership. This is all about, helping people understand who they are as they're climbing that
Mhm.
ladder. And one of the things that's happening right now in leadership is burnout. Like people are
Yeah.
burning out because they're working hard, especially coming out of the pandemic, people feeling like they have to work harder to even get by anymore. People have left their jobs. And so people who are left carrying the bag, like holding a lot of the weight. So through the lens now of somatic coaching,
Mhm.
trauma-informed coaching, how can people really look at that mind-body connection to avoid burnout?
Mm. Yeah. So first of all, you're absolutely 100% right. And burnout is also holistic,
Mm.
right? When think about just that word, burned out. What are the symptoms of burnout? Like if
Exhaustion.
exhaustion, so that's physical
Yeah.
right there, right? So exhaustion. What are other symptoms of burnout?
Emotional breakdowns.
Right. So
Right.
yeah, so emotional catharsis or crying or something like that, right? So that's an emotional thing. What's another symptom of burnout?
You can have headaches, migraines, flu,
Mhm.
get sick.
Yep. And one of the key features of burnout is also additionally hopelessness.
Ah,
Like that's actually when you actually look at the definition of burnout, hopelessness is one of the key factors. For you to go to a doctor and kind of get a mark off, like, oh yes, you're burned out, like a diagnosis of burnout, hopelessness has to also be present. So it's physical exhaustion,
Wow.
it's disconnection from your work, or repulsion from your work, kind of like you hate you hate
I
where you're
hate my
going
job.
every
I
day,
hate.
and hopelessness. So you think about that for a second. That's body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
Exhaustion is physical. I hate my job, you know, that persistent negativity, that's emotional, and hopelessness, that's spirit,
Spiritual. Yeah. That's your spirit.
right? So when I look at when I first looked at the definition or the qualifications for burnout, I was like, oh my God, there it is right there. Like that proves that we as humans live on three planes of existence simultaneously. Like we live on a physical plane, we live on an emotional plane, we live on a spiritual plane. And spiritual being that, and what I'm doing meaningful? Is, you know, do I have hope in terms of what I'm doing? Am I making a difference? Like those are spiritual kind of ideals that as humans that we connect to. I think that's one of the, because I'm sure you've probably had times in your life like I have where you don't feel like you're making a difference. You feel hopeless. And I can tell you from my experience and the people I've worked with that for people, that existential angst or disconnection is just as debilitating as having their a slip disc and they can't get out of bed.
Thank you for saying that.
Right.
Because, you know, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame is connected to emotional, like that. When people talk about mental health, they're not just talking about your your ability to think, or, you know, that they're talking about that spiritual and emotional disconnect. And so there's a lot of shame that people feel like, well, I should be able to just get out of bed and do this. I should be able to, you know, why can't I? And then they start hiding, and you end up going down that deeper hole. So thank you for sharing that the emotional is just as debilitating as the physical, and the spiritual is just as when you have that hopelessness, it's just as debilitating as if you fell and can't get up. You know, I've fallen and I can't get up.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
It takes the same toll on you. And when you can experience one without the other two, and then you can bounce back. But when you have all three in operation, that's when you have that burnout. So what is something that, as you're treating your patients, your clients, that you've seen beneficial?
Well, I could tell you 100% what we always say is start at the body. Start at the body.
Why is that?
So, well, because the way our brain functions, Alicia, the way that we construct reality, essentially is what we call sensory in. So our brain it's closed up in a skull, a dark box, basically, right? I like to call it the CEO in the dark. It's like a CEO that's locked in their office, no windows, and there's only one doorway coming through, and the information that comes in can only come in from their executive assistant. Right? Nobody else can deliver it. That's basically because the way the information synapses as it gets to the brain, right? From anywhere in the body, there's at least two synapses before the information gets to the higher cognitive function areas. So our brain is always informed by what's going on, and you said it, in our senses, in the sensations in our body. How our body feels is the primary information, the way our brain primarily determines what's going on. Right? So if our body has, I mean, you've probably had these experiences, right? If you have a lot of vitality in your body, if you have a day where you're like really energized, you feel really good, you know, you could get a letter in the mail that says, hey, you know what, you owe an extra $3,000 in taxes. And you'll be like, you know what, I don't like that, but I can figure it out. Like we can figure this out, right?
Yeah.
But if you have no energy and you're really, really, oh God, you're exhausted and you're drained, and you get that letter,
it's one like, more thing.
It's like, oh my God, I just want to like stick my head in a hole, and I can't deal with this. I just cannot deal with this. So from a primary level, how the level of vitality we have in our bodies the level of health that we have in our bodies is the primary informational system for our emotions and our spiritual access and connection. Right. So, and I'm not suggesting that there's not some impact the other way, because I've certainly worked with people, although I'd have to say it's more rare, for people who have chronic illness but are very tapped in spiritually and very tapped in emotionally and can navigate their chronic illness in a very unique way. And I say unique because it's not very common for people. I've worked with, literally at this point, at least tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people over the last 30 years that I've connected with. And I can tell you, there's really, my true experience of that is, maybe a little
Less
more than
than
a
1%.
handful, couple of handfuls,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And but I tell you what, when you have an experience with a person like that, it changes you forever. And that's one of the things that really changed me. I mean, I have a great story around that. When I was a young PT, my very first job at Buffalo General Hospital, I was assigned to the hospice unit. And so I walked into this room, and so I'm on the hospice unit, which means that people are on the hospice unit know that they're going to die. I mean, they're like, it's any time now. And so I was going up to do an evaluation with this woman, and I walked in, and she had cancer, so she had a headscarf on, and she's in bed. And when I walked in, I got the note, and ahead of time, and I expected, oh my God, this person's going to be like, I don't know if I want to go in there. I don't know if I can emotionally handle it, sort of thing.
Handle it, right.
And I walk in, and she's glowing. She's literally like glowing. And I was like,
What is
hi,
happening
I'm
here?
Brian. And she starts asking me about my life and what's important to me. And she's sharing what's important. And it was like transformational for me, that like, that's even possible for somebody. And that happened a couple other times. So again, it's not most people, but go ahead. I digress. But going back to what we're
I
talking
love that
about,
you're saying that, because that's like Stephen Hawking, right? It's like someone who can
totally
transcend that physical condition and see the world completely differently.
I
Despite
love it.
everything else. So that's important, because this is about confidence. This show is about confidence and understanding that mind body connection, mind body spirit connection. Well, spirit first, spirit body mind, spirit mind body. I don't know.
Body.
Anyway,
it's all one though, right?
It's all one though.
Yeah, it's all
but understanding there. That they are connected, but that when you take care of the health and vitality of one, it impacts the other, the others. And so if you have that chronic or debilitating physical, there's nothing you can do that's going to control it getting any better. Work on, elevating your spirit and your mind.
Exactly.
So that you can transcend what's happening in the body and vice versa. So
vice versa.
That's
with
the point I wanted to make about.
I agree 1,000% with all that. And typically, most commonly, as humans in leadership roles, my experience is the body is the easiest place to enter into that process with people. The simplest, because it's the most tangible, right? It's the most tangible. It's the least intangible.
It's
working on your emotions gets
airy
mucky
fairy,
and sticky. Yeah, exactly.
Woo woo, as people say. So we're not getting into the woo woo. That it's physical, it's tangible, and also what people most people don't understand, which I learned from you, is that it gets immediately directly to the subconscious.
Yes.
It is the direct path to the subconscious. So because it subconscious is connect. This is what's so cool. This is like what blew my mind, was an aha when I did that session with you guys, was the understanding that the subconscious mind controls all the automatic functions of your body, of your physical body. And so why wouldn't the trauma that you experience be in the, like, even if it's mental trauma and it's manifesting physically, that is the quickest way through the body to get back to that subconscious, because the subconscious mind controls every function of your body.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
So
pretty
you're
simple
tapping,
once you
yeah,
understand it,
you're
right?
tapping directly into the subconscious mind. That blew my mind. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
All this
Yeah.
stuff that we keep learning and learning about the subconscious mind, and how do we get into the subconscious mind, and how do you recognize things? Direct path through the body.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just shortcut it. Let's
Let's
just
just
take the
shortcut it
shortcut.
straight through the body. Yeah.
Let's go through
So,
that. Yeah, so it's really about helping people to re-energize their bodies. And so we talk about when people have low energy, like which happens with burnout, right? People are exhausted. That's, I think that was the first word you used. We look at the first thing we look at, we call energy blocks. So you already said energy circulates through the body, right? The energy, we've already established that the body is energy. The body's like an energy circuit. Like there's energy kind of flowing through the body. And just like any circuit, just like the energy going from your the plug in the wall to the computer, if you took that cord and like kinked it, you'd cut off the energy flow going from the wall to the computer would crash. So same thing in our bodies. When we have tension in the bodies, and this is like the one thing I've really learned tremendously from my time working as a PT, is probably one of the most detrimental things for people's levels of energy is chronic tension in the body. If I could like beat that drum and say, hey, you know what? I mean, if there's one thing you can do, just one thing, it's like reduce the amount of chronic tension you have in your body, and your life will be so much better, you won't even believe it.
so how do they do that?
Well, lots of different ways. So one way is to do things like working directly on the body. So like getting a massage, great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of self massage. So I take like a ball, like a lacrosse ball, and I'll put it on the floor every morning, and I lay in there and I work my back in there and I work it up and down my arms, and there's all kinds of tools that you can use. Foam rollers, ball. So ball rolling is huge. I advocate that for most everybody. It starts to release some of that chronic tension in the system, right? So then you get more energy flow going along. So that's a great thing to start with. We also at the Somatic Coaching Academy, we have a program called core centering. So we actually teach people what we call core centering practices. And so there's 4 parts to that. There's massage, like we've talked about, and then breath practices, movement practices, and meditation practices. We put those all together. So the massage kind of starts to loosen up the system and allow like you're taking the kinks out. And then the rest of those practices, the movement practices, the breath practices, and meditation practices, like kind of like actually charge the system. So it gets the energy running through the system sort of thing. So that's like one of the things we do a lot of with people who want to amplify their levels of vitality, self-vitality, is to really help that. And one of the most amazing thing that happens is once your body is feeling more vital and kind of comes, you kind of come back online sort of thing, right? Then your emotions,
because then that
which
triggers the endorphins and all the good
exactly, yep,
chemicals and stuff.
it starts to create balance in your system. I mean, what we call your autonomic nervous system, right? Which is where a lot of that trauma-informed work kind of comes from, is how do we influence your subconscious mind, which is your body, via your autonomic nervous system or your automatic nervous system. And so really, when you can help somebody get into what we call the optimal zone of arousal. So can I just talk about this for just a really quick second? The window of tolerance, how it works.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, because I think it makes a lot of sense. So here's the thing. So it's called the window of tolerance model, and think about a window. And in the window is the window of optimal function or optimal arousal from your autonomic nervous system. So when you're in that window and you feel optimally aroused autonomically, autonomic nervous system is the nervous system that controls both you being awake, also being asleep. And so when you're in the optimal window, you are present, focused, clear-minded, reasonable, have conversations like kind of we are right now, right? We're in the social engagement. So we're in this level of optimal arousal sort of thing. At least I am, in this level of optimal arousal. I can't speak for you. Okay. Now,
100%.
Above that, right? So above that level is what we call hyper aroused. And so this is where you go into fight or flight. And it's kind of where your nervous system steps on the gas and you're like, go from this cruise control to your rear running really high. And then below this level of optimal arousal is basically the braking system,
Mm-hmm.
what we call the parasympathetic nervous system response, where your nervous system shuts
Slowing
on the
down.
brakes and shuts you down. So here's the 100% true kind of idea from trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive frameworks, Alicia, is that when I'm working with somebody and they're having trouble with whatever, with a colleague, with a partner, with an employee, with their own capacity to meet deadlines, with a boss, whatever it is, I can almost guarantee that they're having that problem, and that problem is highly informed by them by being out of that optimal window. They're either hyper aroused or hypo aroused.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the
I
time,
see that.
in the
Yeah.
Western world, we're hyper aroused.
Yeah.
And when we're hyper aroused and our foot's on the gas, what happens in our fight or flight system is that we lose access to our cortical function in our brain, so that we really can't make good decisions. We lose the capacity to really witness ourselves as being, witness our emotions, our reactions,
Yep.
our responses. Okay.
They're just in reactive mode.
We're
Yeah.
different. We get more chronic tension because there's a lot of adrenaline in the system. So you get more chronic tension, not less, when you're hyper aroused. Cortisol floods the system, which actually shuts down your capacity for your memory centers to work. So we actually forget what actually is a problem for us or not a problem for us, or what we're supposed to answer this or not answer this. So our memory's affected when the cortisol's in the system a little bit more. Our digestion gets worse, shuts down. Our immune system drops,
nauseous,
feel
right?
nauseous, right? So, and all of that affects how you function.
How you
It all
perform,
affects
right?
how you perform. So it's not a mystery. Like, what my first job is to help people get into the optimal window of arousal by helping them to impact their autonomic nervous systems directly. Once someone's in an optimal window, it's like all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can do this. I can make decisions. And it's really crazy just because you've shifted how your autonomic nervous system works. So that comes from that's where that trauma sensitive kind of piece comes around somatic coaching. Is we're not just trying to get people to think differently. We're actually helping people to master their physiology differently.
Wow. All right. I have so many questions. So many questions.
Thanks for letting me go. Thanks for letting me give you that framework, because it's a big part
so
kind of
important.
what we do, what makes sense for us.
Yeah, that's so important to understand, because if you're a leader in any capacity and you find that you are always running on a hyperdrive, you know, you're going to crash. You can't sustain, that's not sustainable, and you need to be able to have the right tools to get back into that optimal window where you can think clearly, where you're making good decisions. All right. So, this is so good. You know, the idea of meditation too. Again, a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of paradigms that are skewed in one particular way, that dismiss the benefit and the real necessity really for meditation, in order to help us to get back into that optimal level, into that optimal zone. What have you seen, or let me say it this way, how have you helped leaders with this practice of meditation to bring them back to where they can think clearly and they have all their faculties at their disposal and be more effective?
Yeah, great question. So, meditation is a super, super powerful tool. And the way I set it up with people is it's actually the last thing that I do, not the first, because it can be the most challenging for people to really get good at.
And I think
And
it's because of the belief around meditation, what it is and how it operates in your life.
How it operates, how it works. And remember that our subconscious mind kind of tells our conscious mind how to think about things, right? So if we have subconscious resistance to change, which we all do, it's going to come up with all these great ideas and reasons why it's not good for us and not going to work, or not useful, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So when you start in your body, and you help people have less tension in the body, we feel more relaxed. That automatically brings you more into that optimal, closer to the window. You do some self-massage, gets you closer to the window. You do movement, gets you closer into the window. You do breathing, it gets you closer into the window. And then once you're in that window, meditation is way easier. The problem is if you try to meditate when you're outside of the window, what happens is when you're in hyperarousal, our thinking is very disorganized.
Mm.
We're just, because
I
we're
guess
on
that's
very
why they
high.
can't quiet their mind enough
Exactly,
to
right? We're in
meditate.
threat, right? We're basically in hyperarousal, we're in a threat state. And so
Mm.
if you're in a threat state, you're like, what's going on? What's going on? I got to pay attention to that. I got to pay attention to that. What's going on over there? And so we're just collecting information and sifting through it. What's threatening? What's threatening? What's threatening? What's threatening? And so of course, your mind is like running all the emails I got to answer, and I got to get to that person. I got to do that. And so it's very hard to focus just because you're out of the window. If
Mm.
you're in hypoarousal, our thinking is very disabled. So we're shut down, and
Mm-hmm.
we actually can't really focus at all. We get very confused. And what meditation really is, it's the capacity to focus our attention. That's what meditation is. And so the closer you can get people into that window, which just as a side note, I would argue that that's where natural confidence resides,
Mm.
when you're in that window,
I could totally see that. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's where our experience of confidence
Mhm.
resides, in the optimal window.
Yeah, because if you're hyper aroused and you have too much happening, that's when, like you're saying, the when your mind is racing and things are coming at you, you're probably more likely to see negative things
Yep,
than the
totally.
positive, because you're in that fight or flight zone of, and you're in that fear zone. So anytime you're in fear, you can't be confident. It just
It, it,
just doesn't work
it
like
doesn't work. Exactly, right?
you're
Yeah.
going to, yeah. So that makes so much, all of this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I hope everybody who's listening is enjoying this as much as I am, because all this stuff just lights me on fire. The other thing I wanted to share was some of the things that may have challenged you in your journey to owning your own company, owning your own business, now your own leadership academy. Was there anything that really stands out for you that said, you know what, this could have sunk me, but because of what I teach and what I know and how I've learned this stuff, I was able to overcome it. Can you share anything like that?
Oh, totally. So I've been doing this, I've been in this game professionally for for 30 years. And I thought I had it all kind of figured out after about, 5 or 6 years of doing this stuff. And then about 18 years ago, I had a health crisis. I mean, I was burned out. I was even more than burned out. I really, and I didn't even know it too, Alicia. That's kind of the crazy thing. I think a
Okay.
lot of people are burned out
And not know it.
and they don't even realize that that's what's happening.
I love that.
So,
I love that you brought that up, because it's so, so true.
and so
So true.
normalized, right? It's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. Well, I'm exhausted too. Hey, we're all exhausted, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We don't realize
What are
that,
you
we're
What are you
not
complaining
well.
about?
Yeah, we're not well. I mean, as a culture, we're not doing well in that regard. So I was at a health fair. I was working as a PT at a health fair, and I had my blood pressure taken at the health fair. I was like, oh, I get my blood drawn. I'll go get my blood pressure taken. I was doing physical screenings over on the other
Because
side of
you're
the
in that
room.
just
Yeah,
do
I'm
that
just do,
hyper.
right.
Just
Yeah.
do. Just keep
And
going.
so I get my blood pressure taken. It's 179/97, right? So I'm like the healthiest guy in the block, by the way. I'm running every day. I'm eating organic food, all this kind of stuff. And the nurse freaked out. She's like, "You need to go see the doctor
You need to
tomorrow.
go in the
Like this
hospital.
is not good." And I had it checked out, and I had nothing wrong with me, but my blood pressure was sky high. And so I also had, which wasn't putting this together, I had acid reflux. I wasn't sleeping. My back pain and neck pain was horrible. I was so angry, Elise. I was just like an angry person. I was frustrated. I just was not I was just not a happy dude. And I just didn't know why until I broke down in tears. at home over some silly thing that happened. It was like the laundry it was a sock on the floor or something, you know, and I just start crying. I'm like, I cannot take this. I'm so freaking stressed.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, is that actually what's going on? Is
Yeah,
all
physician
of
heal
this,
thyself.
is
It's like,
all of this because I'm stressed, you know?
because we
And
take
I had,
stress so lightly, like it's no big deal,
yeah,
and then when you start
it,
putting all the pieces together.
it was killing me. You know, it was really killing me. And so I really had to do some pretty deep, serious work around getting my footing. And then it took really, a good year and a half, 2 years for me really to kind of start sorting some stuff out for myself. Because
Mhm.
it wasn't only that what I was doing in my life and what I was piling on my life, talk about overwhelm and burnout, right? It wasn't just what I was piling on, it was why I was piling it on.
Mhm.
Why was I so attached to it?
Mhm.
Why couldn't I let it go? Why did I keep doing it even though I said I was going to let it go? Right? So all of that deep excavation came, but I'll tell you what, it came more easily because I entered in through body processes. Thank God I had practices, body-centered practices like these core centering practices that we teach that help to really loosen up the belief systems in my physiology so that I could process them and deal with them. One of the things we see where people really struggle, people come to our programs all the time and they say, you were able to help me. I've been in therapy for decades and I haven't gotten the support and the help that you were able to give us.
Mhm.
And really, one of the reasons I really think we hear that is because oftentimes when people are in intellectually based therapy, and I love therapy, by the way, we have psychotherapists on our teams and those sorts of things. Of course, we do a lot of body centered work. One of the downfalls I see of just an intellectual or talk based therapy is, remember, our subconscious mind tells our conscious mind how to think about things. And so our intellect is the
Not
most
breaking
highly
through resistance.
defended systems,
It's not breaking
right?
through the resistance, right?
Not playing through the resistance. So to go in through the body actually loosens up the belief systems that are wired into our physiology so that we can do something with them. And so that's kind of was my story. Like I really was at the end of my rope. Thank God it wasn't the end of my rope, right? I was at the middle end of my
Middle end
middle
of my
rope
rope.
or whatever.
You are end
And
of that rope. You
end of
had
that
more rope
rope.
to go, but that rope was.
Exactly. But a huge wake up call for me, like a really huge and transformative experience that I'm so grateful for now. Even though it really stunk at the time,
Yeah.
it was horrible on so many ways. I'm so grateful for it because it really changed my whole life and it propelled me to actually starting my own business, believe it or not. At that time, I was working in a hospital.
Mhm.
And can I really quick share the
Mhm.
story
Yep.
around how I started my own business?
Yes, absolutely.
So I figured out my blood pressure, my acid reflux, like I got my stress and my burnout like all sorted out. And I was so proud of myself, Alicia. I'm like, I really got it figured out. I'm just going to take care of myself for the rest of my life. Like I've got it dialed. And then I had to go back to the doctor about 9 months to a year after like this incident happened. I had a sinus infection and I saw a different doctor in the same office and it was a new doctor. So I never met him before. And so I walk in and he says, hey, and he sees my chart. He says, hey, Brian, do you know you have a history of high blood pressure? And I said, yeah, I know. He said, well, I have to inform you then on some things. I have to educate you. He said, I have to educate you. And he gives me 3 pieces of paper. This was his education, 3 pieces of paper. Get enough exercise, eat a low fat diet, and drink plenty of, and don't smoke. Like those were give me 3 pieces of paper, low fat diet, exercise, don't smoke.
You clearly
So
didn't know who you were.
I clearly have never so I took him out. I said, thanks, doc. I appreciate it. So I take him home and I look at it and I say, oh, all right. So I ate a great diet. I eat farm food from around the corner. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. And I
Mhm.
exercise every day. And
Yeah.
so obviously those weren't my problems. So I caught the doctor like 2 days later in the parking lot. And so I said, hey, doc, I just want to thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the information that you gave me here. I said, and I'm really curious, why not anything about stress? And he said, oh, Brian, I got to tell you, I know all about stress. He said, actually, there's a study recently came out that stress is the leading cause of death via heart disease in our country.
Mhm.
But you know what? I don't have time to deal with it. And when he said that, it was like just like what just happened right now, Lisa. It's like the earth went, And I looked around in the parking lot. Of course, there's nobody there. And I'm like, did anybody just hear what he said? He said stress is the leading cause of death,
But he don't have time to
but
deal
he
with
doesn't
it.
have time to deal with it. And so in that moment, at least I swear in that moment, I said, you know what? I'm going to deal with it.
This is why, yes, this is why you have to be your own best advocate when it comes to your healthcare,
Yeah.
because doctors are stressed and they don't have time to deal with it.
They don't have time to deal with it, right? They just don't have time.
This is
So
amazing.
in that
Okay.
moment, that's the moment I decided to start my own business. And within 6 months, I had left that hospital and I launched my own practice. And it was all based around this idea we're talking about, basically 18 years ago now, 17, 18 years ago, around helping people to learn how to influence their own autonomic nervous system so that they have the healthiest body, the healthiest mind, the most connected nature to our spiritual nature or other people, or however you describe that. But it all lines up when we really understand how to consistently support our own nervous system, our own autonomic nervous system in a powerful way. And so that's thanks for letting me share my origin story. I don't get to share that a
Oh,
lot, but that's
no,
that's
I
where it really
love
started
it.
for me.
I love it because again, when you were talking about leadership, you made a bold decision that some people might not have made. They might not have been, they might have just said, well, all right, and gone home. And you were like, no, this is a problem and I'm going to make a decision to solve it. This is not okay.
Yeah, this is not okay.
So
Exactly.
that's powerful. That's a powerful leadership lesson. So as you're moving through your life and there's stuff that comes across your path, and this is a very important awareness thing too, is if it comes across your path, it's because you have the power to change it.
Yeah.
Don't just complain about it. It was given
Right.
to you because you have the power to do something about it. So don't just sit there and say, well, oh, why didn't you say that to me? Gosh,
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
think about it a different way, like
Yeah.
turn that thought around and say, that's a problem. That's an opportunity. I'm going to tackle that.
Yeah.
Yay, bravo to
Totally.
you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So before we get into our rapid fire, is there anything else? You told your origin story. Is there anything else that you want to share about leadership, this idea of confidence in somatic coaching or trauma informed coaching that we didn't touch on?
Boy, yes. Do we have a week?
I know this is,
to
listen,
be together?
I'm
It's
listening
like,
to you and I'm like, we need to just do a show, like a series together, because there's so much in this and I love it. Because it's helping me. I mean, you're talking and I'm learning and I'm loving it. So,
yeah.
and you already know that I am not, I'm creator third. I'm spirit searcher. I'm searcher, spirit creator. So, I'm a searcher. So I love the information. I love making an impact. So this show is definitely going to make an impact with those. I'm thinking of everyone I'm going to share this episode with personally. I'm going to send them this. Listen to this. So because this is powerful. It really is.
Yeah, I think the last word I would say is, and it's not a small word, but I'll just mention it, is the idea of environment. Lisa, is to, again, if we think about that optimal window of arousal, is like, make sure, I think any of us as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as infopreneurs, however you categorize yourself in that regard, but definitely as people that are doing bold stuff in the world and want to become the most confident in the world and show up that way, is always create an environment that reflects back your greatness. I mean, I think that's really like one of the best things we can do, right? And it's going to reflect back our greatness because it puts us in that optimal zone. And too many of us create environments that reflect back hyperarousal and threat, or we create environments that reflect back hypoarousal or keeping us down. So can we create an environment that reflects back to us a nervous system state of arousal that is correlated with being confident?
I want to do a dance. I'm like, I just want to jump up and dance, because that is like, drop the mic right there. We need to create an environment that reflects the confidence that we have, or that even if the confidence we're aspiring to, we have to surround ourselves and live in that space. And that will continue to lift us up, but not take us over. Like it'll continue to build us up and build our, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So I'm going to do this rapid fire. I don't know what's going to come out of this.
All right, me either.
But this is going to be really interesting here with Brian. So Brian, what's your biggest leadership mistake that you ever made or was a victim of?
Oh, toxicity for sure. Environmental toxicity. We're just talking about environment.
We just talked about exactly.
Totally, yeah.
Can't stay in
letting myself be in a toxic environment for too long.
How many of us haven't done that?
Oh my God, yeah, horrible.
Horrible. What's the best leadership advice that you ever got that you still implement today?
So one of my supervisors I worked with at a hospital here, actually where I live locally in upstate New York, I really connected with him, and we always had this jovial relationship. And what he would always say is, "Hey, we're serious about what we do, but that's as far as it goes."
And yes, I know you, and that is true of you and your wife, beautiful Ani. That's as far as it goes for me too. I'm serious about getting you results, but that's about it.
Yeah. So that's as serious as they get. Otherwise, we're having a good time.
We're having a good time.
Like we'll get serious about the results, but otherwise, that's as far as it goes.
It's fun. Yeah, it has to be fun. It has to be fun.
Yeah.
If it's not fun, it's not worth doing.
Right.
That's my motto. And I think my kids too. That's why they don't like school. Anyway. So if you were a castaway on a deserted island and and there are only 3 things that you hoped or wished for that could wash ashore or get airdropped from a plane, what would they be? And one of them cannot be a phone to call for help to get out of there.
Okay. All right. So definitely a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich.
Okay.
Just love BLTs. It's like
BLT.
And actually that's my initials too, by the way, which is kind of funny.
That's true.
Yeah. So
I don't know what the L is for, but I know the B and the T.
Well, my middle name, Lettuce, is my middle name.
Lettuce.
Yeah. So definitely a BLT. Can it be people?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people that I love, you know, my wife and like people like you, Lisa. Let's.
Oh, you're bringing me to the deserted island?
Yeah, let's get on the island and have a party.
Have fun. We'll have a party, right?
The people I love being around.
Your kids and
the people I love being around, I would say. And I get a third thing actually. Wow.
Whole third thing.
I got a BLT. I have
the people all splitting that BLT now because
BLTs for everybody. and everybody I love around me, and probably a hat.
Yeah, to keep your head from
exactly. Yeah.
Keep your head not warm, but keep it shaded.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so this is an interesting one that kind of stumps people sometimes. So if you were a song or a song title that is out there in the world, what would that be and why?
Take It Easy by the Eagles.
Oh, that wasn't hard at all. That didn't stump you at all.
Yeah, that's my theme song. Take It Easy.
Easy
by the Eagles.
Right. And that's true. You're easygoing. You know, when you're describing yourself when you were having your moment break, that doesn't even sound like you now. It doesn't even sound like who you are.
Totally different. Totally different. Yeah. And there's one line from that song that really resonates for me. And it's, Alicia, it's, we may lose or we may win, but we'll never be here again. And like, I love that from that. When I hear that line every time, it's like, yes, like that's it. Like we may lose, we may win, but we'll never be here.
Let's enjoy this moment.
Exactly.
And appreciate this moment right now because it'll never happen again. So what are you reading now, or what are your top 3 books of all time?
Top 3 books of all time. So number 1, and it's right here on my desk, is many different versions of it, but the Tao Te Ching. So that's Lao Tzu's Taoist text on Taoist philosophy and wisdom and understanding. So that's one of my absolute best favorite books. I keep this with me all the time, my little pocket guide. So I look at
I
that,
had
look at that
never
a
seen
yacht.
that before.
Yeah. The Tao Te Ching is something I kind of live from. Other favorite books. Well, I would have to say lately I just reread The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, and it's 20 years old, and I read it a couple of times, but I just picked it up recently and reread it. And really the forefront of epigenetics, which I just love, that whole idea of epigenetics and understanding those things. And I only get one more book. Wow, there's so many more of them. One of the other ones that I really love, which is pretty popular and transformational around trauma work, is Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And so that has also been super informative in how the work that we do at the Somatic Coaching Academy.
Wow. The body keeps the score. Um, so like just one last thing, as I was thinking of it earlier and I remembered it now, is when people, and this is for everybody who's listening, when you feel tension or headaches, and it's repeating, because the subconscious mind picks up patterns.
Yeah.
So when you enter a situation and suddenly you get this tension in your shoulders or your back or your neck, or you get a headache, that's the subconscious mind, again, bringing that pattern back to you. Mm-hmm. Don't just say, oh, I have a headache. Oh, this again. Be aware that it's something that's happening in your environment, something that's happening that is triggering that in your body from your subconscious mind. How can people become more aware of those things?
Yeah, well, I think what you just said there was perfect, by the way. It's actually just talking about it differently, right? It's just a different level of awareness, because people are aware they have a headache. So, and now where the awareness comes is understanding why they have a headache. And so a lot of people I have a headache because that person is here. I have a headache because of what they're saying, rather than saying, oh, I have a headache and this is part of a pattern for me. Just that awareness by itself is awesome. And then once you understand that it's a pattern, what you can do, what we help people do, is create a pattern interrupt. You just have to interrupt the pattern. And if you can interrupt the pattern, it actually creates room for more awareness. And it creates room for a new pattern to then be activated within it. So you have to recognize it as a pattern, interrupt the pattern, and then put a new pattern in there. But I love what you're saying. But what you're saying is like the key part, Alicia, is recognize that this it's not a result.
It's just a headache.
It's the pattern, right? It's a pattern.
It's not just, you walk into work and suddenly it's like I heard someone talking about starting their own business recently, and she said, when I was sitting in my car every day crying, bawling my eyes out to go into the office, my stomach was churning. Enough of those days, you realize I need to do something different here.
Different, yeah.
I can't keep doing this. But don't get to that place.
Right.
How many things did she ignore before getting to that place of a complete breakdown every single day driving into work? So don't get to there. Start recognizing the tension before you get to that.
Sooner. Yeah, exactly. That's 1,000% right. Recognize the more subtle signs. The sooner you recognize those subtle signs, the faster you can make changes and shifts that are super healthy for you and everybody around you, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I, as you can tell, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. And I thank you so much, Brian, for sharing all of that, for coming on the show. And like I said, there are people I can always say, I'm sending this directly to once we launch it, they're getting this direct. In fact, yeah. I might even bump the launch date up because it's so good. But I thank you so much, and thank you for our friendship and being part of my team and all this stuff. So I really
Alicia, Thank you so much for inviting me to come on. It was just super fun. Always super fun hanging out with you. And this is a lot of fun to talk about this
Yeah.
topic.
And the
Thank
next
you so
time we get
much.
together, we'll talk about motivational maps and the laws of the universe, because I know you love those and I love
Oh,
them
yeah.
too. So we got to do this again and talk about those other things that affect the mind in a different way. All right. So, let me close out. So thank you so much, Brian. And for all of you out there, I want to encourage you to lead yourself, lead your teams, and lead your organizations with audacious confidence. Until next time. Bye.